All right. Well, it is still extremely hot outside, but we are getting closer to one of the best times of the year. And as you can see, clearly, I am at one of my favorite places, generic high school football stadium X. And with high school football and college football on its way, I want to do some preview videos. This is SpOKen Freely. I'm Glen Brockenbush. And last year, I actually had this guest on this time last year to preview the 2021 season. But for one reason or another, the video was never uploaded. And I take responsibility, and I feel awful about that. So to make amends, I invited him back. He was nice enough to say yes. And when I say nice enough, I know I've talked about just about every guest that I have about how busy they are. This guy, like, it blows me away, all the things he does. Scout, writer, editor, father of two, including a soon-to-be one-year-old. Michael Knight from Prep Redzone joins me to highlight some of the high school football storylines, recruiting, and what to expect from guys in Southwest Oklahoma. Michael, how are you tonight, man?
I'm doing good. You know, the 2022 season's right around the corner. It's been a long off season, but you know, fortunately the guys have been able to throw the pads on, and we're starting to hit a little bit. We got scrimmages coming up, and you know, we're less than 2 weeks away from week 0, so we're ready to start talking about you know, what's happening on the field instead of what's happening and what could happen with you know, preview and all that stuff.
Yeah, you mentioned preview, and you know, you obviously, and I'll just give a brief synopsis, and feel free to chime in, because I know last year you covered all the things that you did, and then I stupidly lost the footage. And but you have been in this industry for over a decade, and it started pretty young. And a couple of years ago, people might know you from OK Preps, and then 1 year leading up to the season, a friend of mine was like, "Hey, I noticed OK Preps hasn't uploaded anything to their YouTube channel a while. Is Michael okay?" And from the ashes of OK Preps, you rose like the mighty phoenix with Prep Redzone, the Prep Nation umbrella, if you will, began its Oklahoma offshoot. I believe, was it 2 seasons ago, or 2020, correct?
Yeah, 2020 was year number 1, which is kind of a
fun year to start a thing.
Yeah, somewhat crazy year to you know, start a football website in the middle of a pandemic. But yeah, 2020 was our first year. We're about to start up year number 3.
And for those who haven't checked out Prep Redzone, first of all, what are you doing? It's such good content, daily content, multiple articles, almost all of them, many of them written by Michael himself. And on top of that, you run camps, you do all of these you know, analysis of these players. And you know, on top of that, as I mentioned, you're a family man, you're a father of 2. I can imagine that this time of year, as exciting as it is, gets extremely stressful. Has it been more difficult as you've gotten, you know, more things in your life going, or, you know, is that just kind of par for the course at this point?
You know, like I said, you know, this is year 3 for Prep Redzone, and like you mentioned, I've been doing this for over a decade now, so I know what this time of year means. I know, you know, the time that it takes to put in during this time of the year. So at this point, it's not as crazy as people would think, because I kind of have a routine, and that's something that really helps. I think a lot of parents would also say, you know, that's what you try to get into, somewhat of a routine. So maybe being a parent helped me with you know, my work life, so to speak. But I find myself every single year getting into the same routine. It starts, you know, really when one season ends, the off season begins, and you start preparing for the next year. And, you know, what did we do well? What can we improve on? And so, you know, really things start getting ratcheted up in May, when we send questionnaires out to all the coaches in the state. And then We put out a ranking update in June, and then we do team previews throughout July. And then by August, things actually kind of slowed down when you compare August to what July is, with over 90 team previews being published in July alone. A lot of the work has already been done at this point. And so now it's just, it's the like I said at the beginning, the season's starting, and now we don't have to talk about what ifs and what could be. And now it's time to start talking about the games that happen. And it all comes down to being in a routine. But, in addition to Prep Red Zone, I also head up the Oklahoma site for Prep Hoops. And so really now until about mid-March, it's nonstop until about spring break. And then I can get about a week or two off, and then it's, on to the off season. But it's all about the routine, man. If you don't have a routine, if you don't have things organized, it can get chaotic. But luckily, I've kind of got it down to a science, so to speak. Always looking to get better, but schedule-wise, it's not as bad as people would think.
I think you bring up a lot of great points that I think a lot of media members are listening to right now and thinking, oh my God, I feel that, can I get an amen sort of thing? Because one of the reasons why I love covering sports, but one of the reasons why I got out of the newspaper industry was, it is a grind. And as much as I enjoy sports, there are a few things I enjoy more than sports. It's probably a number one seed in the things I like bracket, along with, my family and puppies. And, but you mentioned the having a schedule. I think any person will tell you that that's extremely key, and having a routine. And man, I continue to be impressed with what you do. And I was going to save it for the end of the show, but while we're talking about it, you're once again doing your coupon code so that people can get a discount on their yearly subscription. And is that going to again be $9.25?
Yeah, that's one thing I started doing in year one is, I want, and look, I get it, for a lot of people out there, they don't want to pay the subscription fees. And I hear it all the time. But at the same time, the work speaks for itself. It's, in my opinion, and I'm 100% biased, I don't think anybody covers statewide Oklahoma football quite like we do. And so it's night 25 KNI GHT 25. It'll save you 25%. And what I've tried to do is I put that at the top of every single article. So even if you're not a subscriber, you're going to be able to see that first line, which includes the coupon code. So even if you're a new reader, subscriber, potential subscriber, you're going to see that coupon code, and it's going to give you an opportunity to save some money on a subscription.
Yeah, I subscribed, I guess, last year, and man, money well spent, if I do say so. I really enjoy all the work that you guys do. And one of the things that sets you guys apart is, there are other places that cover high school football. You guys focus on the recruiting angle, and you mentioned before the difference between a really good football player and a good college recruit, and how certain guys maybe don't have the requisite size, speed, to pass the eye test, whatever. And you guys do recruit or do rank based on, how they project as a college player. And you guys talk about that up front. And man, you want to talk about recruiting in the state of Oklahoma. It's getting really good because we've got a lot of really good players this year. And one of the things that I feel like in terms of storylines this year, and you wrote about this at length this summer, is I think two big storylines coming into this season, neither of which we figured would be a storyline 3.5 months ago. One is just passed or just sent down by the OSSAA this week, was the unsportsmanlike conduct for teams and fans. And I hope that, just as somebody that's been on the sidelines, just as you have, I hope that helps, because I honestly say that one of the biggest reasons that football is better for me to cover than basketball is I usually in a press box, and don't have to hear the terrible things that some people yell.
Yeah.
But then the other big one, the big, like, number one with a bullet storyline this year, people want to talk about the transfer portal in college football. At the high school level, this might be the most crazy offseason. And I'm still relatively new as an Okie. I've lived in this state total of maybe not even quite a decade, but maybe the craziest offseason we've seen in Oklahoma high school sports ever, question mark. And so many players transferring. The biggins, you have Zadavian Sims moving from Texas up to Durant, and immediately, along with a couple other players, immediately making the Lions, who have always been kind of an also-ran for about a decade, immediately make them a contender in 5A. And I say contender, maybe not playing for a state title this year, but he immediately rocketed to number one on y'all's board for 2024. And then the one that sent shockwaves last year, Shaker Reesig, a quarterback at Jinx as a freshman. All he does is lead the Trojans to a state title over their arch rival Union. We figure, great, we're seeing a legend in the making at Jinx. And then we see in May that he transfers. And where should he happen to transfer, Michael?
Yeah, I was actually there. It was a very surreal Friday for me, because I show up at Owasso's team camp in May, and I have a couple guys who, I've made no secret about this. I graduated from Union over a decade ago, and so there's a couple guys who I graduated with, grew up with, who are currently on the staff at Union, currently coaches. And so I go up to them and I say, hey, how you doing? How's the family? Small talk before getting to work. And one of them says, hey, look who's over with the quarterbacks. And I look over and it's Shaker Reisig. And I immediately turn back to my buddy and I'm like, why is Shaker Reisig with the quarterback group at Union? And, the story, it's been told a million times at this point. Shaker practiced with Jinx on a Thursday, and then he showed up at Union on Friday morning. So, he didn't participate in that team camp or anything, but he's on that roster and he's been participating in drills. He's still fighting for that starting job. They haven't announced that he's the starter, but he's the best quarterback on the roster. But it definitely made things more interesting within that rivalry. It was a huge story when it happened. When I look back on it, it's still pretty surprising. And then, you mentioned at the beginning, the OSSAA and their unsportsmanlike thing. We've heard for about a year now about the referee shortage. And I think that this is another way the OSSAA is trying to help get new referees in the fold, is by putting in rules like this where because let's face it, this unsportsmanlike thing is really addressed to the parents, the coaches, the players who want to mouth off to a referee. And when you look at the referee shortage and maybe why there is one, it's like, why would anybody want to get that verbal abuse every single week, 2 times a week on a Thursday and Friday night? And so I think putting that rule in place is just another way for the OSSAA to put a bright, shine a bright spotlight on getting new referees in the fold, which I think, whatever they got to do to get more referees, so we get all these games in every single week. We don't have to deal with scheduling, moving around and stuff like that. Because I have heard that might happen. There's going to be several games that are scheduled for a Friday night that have to get moved to either Thursday or Saturday because they don't have enough refs. I've heard that's going to happen this fall for sure. And so whatever the OSSAA has to do to get new referees. But yeah, when it comes to the transfer portal, this offseason was crazy. I don't think that, we'll have to wait and see on if it's the new norm. Personally, I think that this was kind of a one-off year, where you have a guy like Shaker Reisig going from Jinx to Union after leading them to a state championship against Union. And then he's now a part of the Red Hawk roster. I think that is such a splashy move and such a headline grabbing move. That's why we're talking about it. I think that kind of puts more weight on this being a crazy year for all the moves. There have been. I mean, Austin Havens went from Owasso to Bixby. Knox Dyson went from Union to Beggs. There's been plenty of quarterback movement. But at the same time, we'll have to wait and see on if this just becomes a new trend like what we've seen at the collegiate level.
Yeah, that was going to be something that I thought about asking. And I'm like, I'm not even sure if there is an explanation for whether this is, A, an explanation for why this is happening, and B, is this going to be the new norm, like you said. I will say that from the times that I've interviewed a lot of kids, when I would do player profiles and things, I would ask them, do you watch the NFL? Who's your favorite team? And so many of them. And it shocked me at first. It doesn't surprise me now. It shouldn't surprise us in this era, is they said, well, I don't have a favorite team. I have favorite players. In this age of free agency, and you think about, if you're an Oklahoma City Thunder fan, if you grew up in Oklahoma, the only pro team that you've ever had superstars, and they left and broke your heart. And so, yeah, I can understand, seeing, look, all these players are leaving. Why do I have to, quote unquote, be loyal? And I'm not trying to say anything about Shaker Reisig or anybody who leaves. And that's one thing that you see certainly in an area like Lawton, is with the military community, you see kids come and go all the time, where a team will be like, hey, guess what? We had a 300-pounder show up at our camp this year. And normally people will be like, that's fishy. But, if their parents are in the military, that just happens sometimes. Yeah. And we'll get more into the Southwest Oklahoma kind of aspect in a minute. But we were talking about recruiting, and one thing that Brent Venables, the new head coach at OU, has talked about is trying to keep in-state talent in-state. And it used to be that any kid in the state of Oklahoma, if you got an offer from OU, it was almost a guarantee that's where you were going to go. And obviously recruiting has changed so much in the past 30 some odd years. But of the top 20, I would have to have your rankings in front of me right now. But I want to say in your top 20 or 25, I think only two or one or two were committed to the Sooners. And a lot of them have already committed. There's only maybe 3 left in your top 25 who are still available. By the way, shameless plug, top available prospects story by Michael Knight on the site right now, if you want to check that out. Yeah. But I am looking at it right now, and yeah, of your top 20, Jaden Carroll, Chance Jordan, Morgan Pearson's still available. But really, I mean, not a Michael Taffy is still there, but not a lot of uncommitted guys. And the only one committed to the Sooners as of just a few days ago was Eric McCarty, who we've both seen in person. And I was blown away by him when I saw him last year. The McAllister running back, just a stud. And then we find out literally just right before recording this that Jacoby Johnson, the do everything for the Mustang Broncos, commits to OU still. And like you and I talked about prior to recording, nationally, the Sooners are recruiting fine. They're going to be fine. Should this be a concern at all for OU fans that they're not recruiting that well in state? Do you feel like maybe Venables is gearing up for the next couple of classes? Because as we mentioned, there are some big dogs still available, the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think it's kind of the same thing with the transfer stuff. I think we'll wait and see on how Venables does when it comes to recruiting. This is only, he hasn't even been on the job for a year. And, I think that OU is always going to have a very firm hold on the state of Oklahoma. And, this year, this class, it might just be different. It might just be different. You look at our top 5, and 4 of those kids in the top 5 of the 23 class are committed to out-of-state programs. 2 of those commitments are to Arkansas, which Arkansas basically considers Oklahoma in-state recruiting, and they should. But getting a guy like Luke Haas, Micah Tees to commit to Arkansas, that's great for them. Alabama got a commitment from Owasso's Cole Adams, and then the top prospect in our class is By Job from Community Christian in Norman, and he's committed to Michigan State. So I think that, you know, OU is always going to get the players that they want. And like we've talked about, they're doing fine nationally. They had a really good month in July recruiting nationally, but yeah, I mean, it hasn't gone so well so far with the 23 class, but I wouldn't be concerned because of how well it's gone in the other states and how well they've done elsewhere. We'll wait and see. I mean, you have to, when it comes to recruiting, you have to take a look at several classes to start seeing, okay, there's a trend here. Now, if they start going, you know, the 23 class, let's say all those kids sign with the teams that they're committed to right now, and then next year's class, they don't get anybody in the top 5. The year after that, they don't get anybody in the top 5. Then you can start being worried. Then you can start being concerned. But right now, it's way too early, in my opinion.
It's going to be interesting to see. And yeah, like you said, the transfers, it did set off a bunch of dominoes. Like you mentioned, Knox Dyson. I recently was going through your rankings and saw he still was listed as a Union player on there. And I was like, wait, where did he end up? Because surely he's not, you know, still there. He adds to an already loaded Beggs roster that is going to be one of the top teams in 2A, along with Washington, who also got a great addition, as if they need more tight ends over there at Washington as they get Cooper Alexander. It's just wild. It is wild to see so many players transferring. One thing before I let you go is, you know, we talk about all of Oklahoma on this show, but I am based out of Southwest Oklahoma. A lot of my viewership is out of Southwest Oklahoma. And man, I know that people in Southwest Oklahoma and Lawton, you know, people feel like almost you get past OKC, get towards the Wichitas, and people kind of stop paying attention down here. I think people kind of have this this inferiority complex sometimes that they don't care about us down here. They don't. That is not the case with Prep Red Zone because, man, y'all's preseason all-state teams, first team, second team, and third team have people from Southwest Oklahoma, and it's almost all the big boys. And I have kind of jokingly called this hashtag Year of the Lineman. It's only half a joke because man, if you're into tacos, and here comes another bad joke. If you're into tacos, hope you like beef because this is all just beef. Caden Tabanama out of Lawton MacArthur, just an absolute brick of a human being. Kenny Wormy is somebody that you and I both enjoy watching. Kenyon Bigbo, Anna Darko, Joseph Rendina Brown, Kenny Wormy's cash teammate. And then a guy that I feel like will open a lot of eyes in the next couple of years is Keith Ferguson over at Elgin. And it is really interesting and really cool just from a personal standpoint to see, you know, the Southwest Oklahoma guys get so much love. What have you seen from some of those guys at your camps or at various things over the summer that really impress you, whether it be Kenny or Kenyon or Caden or whoever?
Yeah, I think I've probably seen Kenny the most in person. He's been very committed to trying to get as good as he possibly can and take advantage of opportunities like camps. You know, I think we've run 3 camps now. We did 2 of them this year, one in January, one in April. And I think that Kenny was at both of them. And so I think that, you know, he has a chance to be really, really good at the next level. You know, he trains with the offensive lineman group, Trench Mafia, that do training every single Saturday in the off season. And those are the same coaches that we use during our camps. So I think that Kenny has the chance to be really special at the next level. And then Caden is another guy. He's another Trench Mafia guy that I've seen a little bit at our camps, and he's, you know, you said it, he's firm. Like when he gets his hands on you, you are going to go where he wants you to go. And so I think that there's a lot of guys down in that part of the state that are really good and really talented, and maybe when it comes to their recruitment, they're being somewhat overlooked right now. But wherever they end up going, they're going to have an impact, whatever level that ends up being. But, Kenyon, Big Bo from Anadarko, I saw him first time I've ever seen him in person last summer and was like blown away at the size on that guy. So, I mean, Anadarko, they're going to be able to do some things offensively just behind him alone. But I know that they have plenty of help on that side of the ball. But yeah, there's a lot of size down there. The two guys from Cash, like I mentioned, Kenny Joseph, he's a good offensive lineman as well. And then, like I mentioned, Caden, it'll be interesting to see, them having to replace such a star running back from last year in Isaiah. Whoever ends up filling those shoes, they're going to have at least a leg up on the competition because of the offensive line that's blocking for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was why it was so easy for me to kind of pinpoint Caden as, a player to watch for MacArthur, in that, Isaiah had such a phenomenal year. And I know you saw him in person. And I remember, you want to talk about leaving an impression. I believe at one point he wasn't on y'all's rankings, and then you saw him in that Noble game. And you're like, top 40, there he goes. And, and that doesn't happen overnight, but it also, I mean, we all knew, I think, down here that he was talented. He was a good athlete. He had played quarterback at one point, I think, as his freshman and sophomore year, moved back to running back, which was more his natural position. And yeah, you're right. They having such a great offensive line, that doesn't happen by accident, to run for almost 2,000 yards. Man, we are about 2 weeks away from high school football, and I cannot be more excited. And again, if you want a good primer on all the different, especially the 11-man teams, the 11-man classifications, team previews, recruiting rankings, whatever it is that you want, prep Redzone Oklahoma and coupon code NIGHT25. Michael, thank you so much for doing this, man. I do appreciate it.
Yeah, man, I'm looking forward to actually seeing it get published.
Yes. That's a guarantee.
Yeah, man. I mean, this is what I do. This is always fun for me. It's always good to talk football with anybody and everybody. So, it's a Saturday night as we sit here, but I mean, there's nothing better than high school football in Oklahoma, in my opinion. And to sit here and talk about it and consider this work, I'm a pretty lucky guy. So looking forward to another really good season. And like you mentioned, that coupon code is good to save you 25% off on Prep Redzone Oklahoma. We're going to have content every single day throughout the season. There's a ton of preview content up right now, everything you could want and more. And then throughout the year, we'll have stuff every single day, all the way up until the state championship games. And then all of our postseason content will follow. So now's a great time, if you're not a subscriber already, to jump in and enjoy the 2022 season with us.